Hello and welcome to the Being Human podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Bottaro, and today I've got a great and special guest, somebody who's gone through our CPMAP certification, is graduated, and has now started his own ministry, and his focus is on men. He's working to help men overcome addictions, become better husbands, better fathers, and it's just an awesome dimension of what we get to do here at Catholic Psych is helping individuals develop their own vocations or vocation within a vocation and specific niches of ministry and interests and specialties. And so Nick Clune is on with us today. He's going to talk about what life is like after CPMAP and his ministry, give us a couple insights into the way men work and what men really need. Some of his um, some of his history in ministry and what he's learned working with a lot of young adults. He's also got a great new podcast that's launching. We're going to put the links to all of his resources in the show notes here. So I hope this conversation blesses you and you get to take something away from it. And if you have men in your life that you can share this with, then please do, or women. It's also helpful for women to get an insider kind of perspective on the way that men think and work and tick. And so, anyway, I hope this blesses you. Keep us in your prayers as always, and know that you are in ours. God bless you. I spent the last 10 years learning how to help people using the best techniques available in psychology integrated with the Catholic faith. Now we've figured out that there's a better way to help people than just slapping a Catholic label on the same secular model of therapy you find anywhere else. The real question is, how will we make this shift to a new model of truly Catholic accompaniment, keeping the psychological sciences in mind while opening up to a more human and more effective approach? This podcast is here to give you the answer. Join me and follow along as I take you behind the scenes of what this new model looks like, using recorded audio from sessions working with my team, with colleagues, and even directly with clients. My name is Dr. Greg Bottaro, and I want to welcome you to the Being Human podcast. All right. Nick Clune, welcome. So glad to have you here with us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, this is fun. We've been talking about doing this for a while, so I'm glad we finally had the chance to make this happen.
Yeah. I'm excited. It's good.
It's probably good. It's good. It's taken us a little while because you've been setting things up and kind of getting your ministry going, getting your practice going, and
Yeah.
so now we probably have a little bit more substance to actually talk about anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. God's providence and all things. I think it's like there was when you first asked, because I think you asked like partners what their interest level was on coming on the podcast. I was like pretty hesitant when that first offer came out. I'm like, I don't know. Should I do this? Should I do this? Not do this? But then over the past couple months, yeah, it's been good to start to really focus on serving the mission population that I'm called to, like guys, and start producing stuff for them. So
Yeah. Well, and this is not your first rodeo. Let's start with maybe a little bit of history and a little bit of your backstory. What got you interested in the ministry to men, and sort of what's your experience there prior to CPMAP?
yeah. Um, I mean, there's a substantial history to that, like as there is anything, but it's like um, I think, I mean, specifically desire to serve men probably goes all the way back to like just like experience with my own dad and like seeing ways that I wanted to be a better man and like ways that I could see him being a better man and um, yeah, just wanting that for both of us and feeling that lack at times growing up, not really being able to name it in high school or anything like that. Only in like retrospective, it's like, oh yeah, like that's what I wanted. I wanted like a father to um, guide me into like the masculine genius, into like the good of what it means to be a man.
Well,
Um,
what did that feel like? You couldn't name it, but how did it come through?
yeah. I feel like it was like a lot of stumbling, like in high school, like not kind of like sure of like myself, sure of my footing, always looking towards like others for affirmation, to get a sense of worth, um, and really like kind of hyper vigilant on like my actions. I played football through high school and like other sports, and so there was certainly like this sense of like trying to um, earn my place. Like my dad loves sports, and so it's like, you know, subconsciously, I'm sure it wasn't like a conscious movement in high school, but like, if I do good at sports, like then maybe this affirmation will come from dad. But in the
Mm.
moment, it just kind of felt like a meandering of sorts, um, like I don't know, like something was off, and I couldn't put a finger on it. In high school, and
Could you feel like you couldn't really feel your footing, like you didn't really know what you
yeah,
were supposed to do?
yeah, what I was supposed to do, like who I was, who was I supposed to be, like I always kind of felt like grasping after some sort of identity, and it was easy to grasp it in like sports. Like I come from a high school where we won like three state championships in football when I was there, and then four in my brother's class who was like a year below me. So it was like really easy to place all the stock in sports and achievement, and then even like the hometown I grew up in was like Farmtown, Ohio. So like it was sports, and then people going to the bars on the weekends. That was people's lives, like both like at a high school, like college kid age, and then also at like an adult age, right? Like you know, growing guys, like is high school football and the bars. So
Yeah, it sounds like you're probably pretty relatable to most men in America. It's,
yeah,
especially once you get out to like the Midwest and you get into, away from like city life anyway.
yeah,
It sounds like a pretty standard kind of identity and a set of patterns of behavior. But it's interesting because you're saying like you didn't know your identity. I don't think many high school kids are even asking that question.
sure,
Just like you said, you didn't necessarily know how to articulate it. And now we look back in hindsight and we can use those words, but it's like I remember thinking like, how am I supposed to act? Like, what am
mm,
I supposed to do? It's even like, what do I wear? How do I carry myself? How do you talk to a girl? How do
yeah,
what do you do on the weekends? Like, it's like, you're just looking for guidance, for an example, for a model. Like, show me what to do.
yeah,
And if
yeah,
that's missing in any clear directive, in any real intentional way, then you're just kind of left to start looking around. Like, can we find a model or an example or a directive somewhere?
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, yeah, 100% like a part of my story, and just like constantly looking um until, yeah, until finding, like there was like conversion moments, like where I started to learn about the faith, and heard some really awesome guy speakers, right? And like there was some great affirmation there, but there was still like so many parts of my life that were looking for that direction, and so many places that weren't it, right? That weren't
Yeah. Do you remember any of those that any stick out to you? Like any specific
like places I was
moments
looking.
or
Yeah.
speakers or
Oh,
anything that
speakers.
like
Okay.
kind of really motivated you or inspired you?
Um, I remember we had like Jason Everett come to our parish, like just our podunk town of 4,000 people. Jason never came
Yeah.
and filled the whole church, right? Because everyone in the entire county came, and uh, I remember being there. I went there not on my own kind of like initiative, but one of my buddies was like leading something for music. And so I like sat up in the choir loft with him, and I was like definitely too cool for school. Like I don't need to go to this thing. And then I went there, and like he talked about what he talks about, like the theology of the body, and just the beauty of sex. And like that sold me as a high schooler filled with testosterone. I was just like, all right, sign me
That
up.
sounds
Like,
good to me.
yeah, you're saying like sex is good. Like, okay. Um, but like it also spoke into like a large area of brokenness in my life too. Like there was, you know, I discovered porn when I was like 10, and like he was able to speak into like why it made sense that like I turned to that and like cope with that, but then also like, you know, there's hope to not use porn and to like turn towards freedom. And it was great. I would love to say like it was like, yeah, after that I was like clean, but it wasn't. It was a long journey from there. Like, well, like it was like a meandering to that point of
Hmm.
um like I don't know if this is bad, or like I feel guilty when I use this stuff. Then like heard that talk and was like, oh, like light bulbs click, but it was still like I've got some
Still
work to do.
patterns there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's interesting. Jason is such a great example of a man who is directive and inspiring and gives clear purpose and example of just, a sort of blueprint of what to do. Like here's the roadmap.
Yeah.
And it's so bold and we need it. We need to be bold. Even recently in some of these more difficult conversations when it comes to how to handle people with, some of the transgender confusion. And even today, I just see him as a great voice in the world of Catholic speakers and Catholic sort of or Christian direction. He's very clear, he's decisive, he's
Hmm.
intentional, he doesn't mix words, and he just gets it out there. And it's like, this is how to approach it. This is what we should do.
Yeah.
And it's great. He's got an amazing ministry.
Yeah. It's like a refreshing oh like understanding of like this is what we're made for. This is what this desire is made for when you encounter it. And yeah, it's like a
Yeah.
special gift, like for his concise, like what you're saying, like just to be like, like there it is,
Yeah.
like right on the nose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so then, what brought you deeper into the faith? Where did you encounter
Yeah.
sort of a deeper purpose and mission?
Yeah. So right out of high school, I went on a year with Net Ministries, and that was like growing both as a human, right? Just like being away from mom and dad's house for a year, and like being on your own. You're still like pretty taken care of. Like when you're on net, like you got a lot of other teammates and supervisors, but that was like definitely a year of human growth and formation. And then they also challenged you to like develop a prayer life. I had like the maybe the beginnings of an interior world in high school, but then net was like you actually got to make space, and like we're going to
Mm,
make it a requirement, like 30 minutes a day. And um, that was definitely a changing thing, like to have like kind of this routine place of going and at least creating silence.
mm,
Like that was a big moment, and kind of set up the trajectory of like faith life after that. It was like something that I appreciate, like going back to the CPMAP, and the training in that, the riding the waves of desolation and consolation and growth and prayer life. And it was like definitely like these highs on net, and then like I came off net and like straight to like plummeting lows. It was probably more like um, human lows, because it was like I was surrounded by all these people, this great community who was pursuing the Lord, and then I went back to my hometown and like started at a small school there, and
mm.
didn't have that community anymore. And um, so I attribute like net Catholic family land growing up as a kid, like also kind of has ties into um, where faith became alive for me and a lot of my siblings. So
A
I
lot
don't
of
know if you.
seeds planted.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Have
Yeah.
you been to Catholic family land out?
I haven't been there, no, I've heard of it. I know people that have
Okay.
been there. Is it in Ohio?
Yeah, it's like 20 minutes away from Steubenville.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, and it's like, and I think that's like I've talked to a lot of folks who've gone to Steubenville, and they're like, what is Catholic family land? I'm like, you guys are like neighbors, like like
Yeah.
um, but it's like a great place. It's like family consecration and oriented, and or consecration to the Holy Family oriented, and that's, yeah, a ton of seeds planet in my life of like having different voices than mom and dad talk about the faith like was
Mm.
huge. Like, um, so yeah, those were a few areas where the faith journey like started and is certainly ongoing process from from there.
Yeah, that's great. So then going into college, what was your college experience like?
Yeah. I started studying so after net I like left and like was like going into net I should say I was thinking about computer science and theology and like I was like that high schooler who like I'm like I'm a double major, I'm gonna do it all.
Mm.
And I'm gonna go play football somewhere. Like that was like the high school Nick mindset. Did net, and I came out. I'm like, I want to work with people, and and so it went from like philosophy, hard sciences to like psychology, and which certainly has its fair share of um, mechanical, like understanding it from the Catholic psych model, like definitely gives that objectivity that I don't think I got in my undergrad at all. Like undergrad was all this meandering like through um like the soft sciences. I don't know if it's good to distinguish between the two or not, but um
Sure.
so that's what I studied was like psychology, and then um I like met some focus missionaries on campus when I was at school, and so I received a lot of accompaniment and mentorship through um their presence, and then was blessed to have a lot of good, like not like a ton good guy like men in my life, but like um one or two guys who I could share the faith with, and we would go to the chapel together and go to mass together and play basketball together, those kinds of things. And
Mm.
um that was kind of the college experience, and I was always kind of thinking counseling in the back of my mind. And I hopped on a couple different admissions calls with different counseling programs as I was like discerning out of or not discerning but leaving Wright State, my undergrad. And I'd hop on the call and I'm like, this is great. It's like, but I don't want to do this. Like the
Mm.
program
What
was,
was it? What made you think you didn't wanna do it?
yeah. Um, I don't know. So I was married at the time. I got married in the last year of college, and so my wife was on the call too. And like we sat through it, and like we'd get off of it, and we're just like, yeah, this is great. I remember the first time because I did it a couple times. Like it was the same university, and we sat through it. And the first time I was like, "You're going to be doing so much healing. Like you're going to have these healing hands. You're going to help so many people. You're going to be, it like felt like they were saying you're going to be special." And is like I'm like, I don't think I'm going to be doing any healing. Like like God's like the healing like part of like
Oh, so they were putting the
this life.
emphasis on you instead of the bigger
Yeah.
picture.
Yeah,
I see.
absolutely.
Now
And I
wait, let's
just
back up a second. So you got married your senior year of college,
yeah, yep.
and you had taken time off for net. How long did you take off before you went to college?
So I did a year with mission on net, and
Okay.
then um 3 years for undergrad. Um
Oh,
and
okay.
then
So
my
how old were you when you got married?
I was 21. Yeah. And my wife was 23. So, yep.
Before graduation.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So, she was the breadwinner. I was the trophy husband for a year.
Nice. The trophy, the undergrad trophy.
Yeah, as you could tell, I don't know. People probably don't have all are listening to video or watching video, but like the bald head doesn't really match up with the trophy husband aesthetic.
Ah, that's great. That's wonderful. Where did you meet your wife?
She's from the same hometown as me, so we met in high school. Um, in a very high school way, a friend told me that she had a crush on me, and that was the history. And
Wow,
we
did you date before were you dating through college?
Yeah, as much as you can call like high school dating, like it was certainly high school dating. I'm sure there's like really mature high schoolers out there who like can authentically court like women. Like I wasn't one of those like high schoolers. um, and so like we dated, but then when I left for net, or she left for college, and I was still in high school, and then I left for net, and so we had like a lot of time apart to grow as humans, which was totally needed. Like, because then when we came
Yeah.
back together, it was like it was fireworks for like a month. Like we're like, this isn't gonna work. Like
Mm.
we're gonna break up, and then we worked through that, and now we're married, and it's great. I love it.
That's amazing. How many years now?
Um, it'll be 7 in July, so six and a
Nice.
half. Yeah.
That's great.
Yep.
That's great. Yeah, so she was on the phone with you on the calls. You didn't feel connected with these programs, and then what?
Yeah. So then I left and did youth ministry for a few years. There was a brief moment where my wife and I were like discerning mission together, and like to like do focus, or there's a inner city youth ministry called Vagabond,
Sure.
and yeah, we were like pretty much like a week out from accepting positions with Vagabond,
Mm.
and then I got a call from the diocesan youth minister talking about position that combined youth ministry and athletics at a school, like a Catholic school, and
Wow.
I'm like, I guess that's where we're gonna go, because it was a good paying job, and you don't get that in youth ministry very often, and it combines some of my um some of my passions, right, like in sports, and um that's where we went. We took that job, and I landed in Dayton, Ohio, and I always thought Dayton was a stepping stone, but we've been here since, and it's been great.
Wow.
um, and I was there for 4 years before I got an email from CatholicPsych about the CPMAP program, and that I transitioned from youth ministry into what I do now as a mentor.
Were you doing was your youth ministry mostly with men, or was it co-ed?
It was co-ed, but it definitely it favored like men, or not men, like
Were you running a particular, like, were you doing, like, football, or was it an athletics program, or what was it?
yeah. So it was the positions were separate positions, and my job was to like combine the two of them in some sort of way. Um, and we got closer to that the whole time, but never like truly had it in a place where the athletics was doing youth ministry.
Okay.
Essentially, is what the hope was. But it was all for like a co-ed school, so
Gotcha.
yeah. But like at my time at the parish, I worked like I also started like a men's group in the parish as like picking up an extra hat, and like started like doing men's holy hours on Tuesday mornings, um and then also like leading small groups for the high school youth guys, and um yeah, that's that's kind of like the like start of like wanting to work with men more, was like just seeing like, okay, like there's a need here, not just with the youth, but like all the guys in the pew, and like started to pray with it, and just like dreaming about like if we had guys who were on fire for the Lord, like husbands and dads,
Mm.
like how much would that change this parish? like like it would it would change things dramatically, but it wasn't like something that was there, and um yeah, it was like a desire in my heart at that moment. Started to start small with like men's small groups, and go from there. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, such a good just wealth of experience, and, it's really interesting how, I mean, really how stereotypical of a story you have.
mhm.
It's like common Midwest. It's just like so many men in our country can relate to everything that you're laying out here. And I'm just really struck by the gospel. Like God calls us, and it's like, Christ just called out these like normal men
Yeah.
and normal women. And so it was like people, just regular people, and they're called out of their lives of really status quo normality to do these radically amazing things. And, it's like even just the incarnation, like God comes into our humanity, which is just so normal. He's just born into the stable. He's, of a man and a woman, and notwithstanding the the virgin birth, but besides
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, everything
you
else was
know,
ordinary.
born into poverty.
Yeah.
And, it's just like they had to just, make their meals and clean the house and build stuff and walk to places and go to market and, pay taxes and all this stuff. And then it's like, yeah, this is how God works in the world. And so, yeah, so God's working in your life through these seeds, through these moments as this story is being built. This narrative is unfolding in your life, and everything seems normal. But then there's this like deepening of a radical call to real ministry, to like really sacrifice yourself. I mean, going on net, I guess, is not normal itself,
Sure.
but it's already kind of, so it's sort of giving indication. It's like if you're reading this in a novel, it's like the foreshadowing. It's like, oh, this is a different kind of character. Like this is somebody who's gonna not go to college right after high school, and he's gonna take a year off, and he's gonna go missionary, wander around. It's like, okay, that's different. But what, God is doing something here much different. So then, and going from like, all right, I'm going to play football to, probably get some like factory job and end up just drinking beer, watching football on the weekends,
Sure.
to like, oh, now I want to work with people. I want to help people. I want to be a part of people's lives. I want to give people things that I didn't have. And all this is developing for you and growing slowly in you. And so then you end up in this awesome position, combining ministry with your hobby and your skill set, and then what?
And then what? Yeah. um then what? God turned things on my head a little bit at that point with so like doing ministry at the parish for a while was good. It was definitely had like its tumultuous moments. Like there's a lot of stuff that happened at the parish that was difficult for everyone who was there. And like still something that I think about and like go back to and working through a little bit in my head.
Like
It's just
scandal type stuff?
s- kind of like there was so like even going into the parish there was like a priest who embezzled a bunch of money. And that was like 10 years before I got there.
Mm,
5 or 10 years. And then like while I was there, like yeah, just like traumatic uh experience with the school principal taking his own life.
mm.
And then um yeah, and then there was yeah, just stuff with the priest too. Like
Yeah, it's
he
devastating. I'm sorry to hear that.
yeah. So the time at parish was definitely taxing, and it started to like really show me like the brokenness, not just in men's hearts, but like everyone's heart. And so like this call to counseling came back, and I think like the third year I was at the parish, like third or fourth year was when I started to take classes at uh as Holy Apostles at the time, and it was really great. It was like starting to discern like, okay, if I'm going to do this parish stuff, I want to be equipped to actually like walk with people through
Mm,
some of these things. I think there was probably still like a subconscious like looking in my own part of like trying to process like what had happened at the parish, and like seeking that out through um, higher education. And then the summer after I started is when I got an email from Catholic Psych in my promotions folder on Gmail, and I remember like looking at it, and
it's
like I
tough
don't
to get
know,
out of that folder.
I don't know why, like it, I don't know what the Holy Spirit like led me to open my promotions folder, because it's like I never opened that like
Yeah.
ever. And I clicked on it and I'm like, I think this is like what I want to do. Like John Paul II's always been like a huge like hero um, in my life since like Jason Everett and him talking about theology of the body. And my mom made us watch Carol, the Man Who Became Pope, the 3 hour dramatized documentary on JP2's life when I was like a 12-year-old. And it starts off in Krakow and they're ringing the bells and the airplanes are coming over, like the Nazis are coming over in the airplanes. And as a
Mm.
12-year-old, I'm like, I'm sold, like sign me up. Like this World War II documentary is like what I'm thinking in my head, but really
Yeah.
it's John Paul II's life starting there. And he just made priesthood look so attractive. I remember after getting married, I was like mourning the fact that I was married, not like crying or like breaking down, but like remembering like the beauty of um like the heroic way that he presented priesthood, like in
Yeah. Amen.
actuality. Yeah, but like in that movie, that's what caught my attention. So
Yeah.
John Paul II was like, I was sold on him, and then the Catholic Psych had this. We're rolling out this new program that's totally centered on John Paul II, and we want to help people. We want to walk with people and help them find healing. And that
Mm.
was like, okay, I'm interested. And then I think I talked to my wife. I'm like, hey, you want to sell our house and move to a bungalow so we can afford this program? And she's like, okay, like rolled her eyes, like, because I've always come to her with crazy ideas about random things, like, and she's like, just another crazy idea. This is just another Yargan bargain idea, which is a pirate themed thrift store idea that I had. Uh, um, but this one was real, and I had to like approach that conversation with her like a week later.
I'm
I
glad
was
we're
like,
in the same category, though. That's kind of fun.
yeah. Yeah, just always ideas, right? Like and she, yeah, I like had come to her and just like, actually I was kind of serious about this. Like I think this is something that I could really um see like getting me to the place where I want to be, as far as like um helping men, like like going through my own story. Like working through a pornography addiction, and like I'm like, I want to help guys overcome that. Like it's everywhere in society. Like not every guy, but like almost every guy I talked with in parish ministry struggled with it at some point in time, or
Mm.
knew somebody who was like really struggling with it. And that was kind of like my hope, was to like walk with guys intentionally in that way. And then it was like, yeah, everything kind of lined up where it's like, this is all about John Paul II, his personalism, um and like the promise too of like making like like working on ourselves, right? Like the promise of like, you will pursue on going conversion if you jump into this program, and like be a better uh man or better person because of it. That was attractive, because I was um I'm like, at the very least, like I'll be a better dad and husband at the end of this, even if it's not like a career. Like that's worth it. And I was definitely sold on that aspect of um, the CPMAP and jumping into the program.
Yeah, it's interesting when you're just starting something new, and as we are, and as we have, it's at that time we hadn't had a bunch of testimonials from people who had gone through it and like started their own business and everything else afterwards, and are actually doing ministry or helping people, or and it's like it's funny how many people just kind of like like they want in, they see it, they sort of can kind of let themselves dream big enough to think that they could be doing this kind of work, and then but they kind of need that other justification. It's like, well, if nothing else comes of it, I'll be a better person.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's amazing because like we're not probably using that as a goal to a lot of the big efforts that we make, a lot of the major
Mhm,
endeavors that we undertake. Maybe we think about that on a smaller scale throughout the day, but very infrequently do we make massive decisions and take massive action to make ourselves better. And then,
mhm,
but then if there's another reason, if we kind of hitch that to a larger project or a larger intention, then it's like, oh, now it's a really nice benefit. We added on, it's a bonus.
Yeah.
And I mean, really, we could kind of think about that as being the primary goal for everything that we do. But it's good when we can attach it to other things like building a business or starting a ministry or
Right.
affecting other people and sharing so much more of what we're doing with others. So you've done an incredible job. You made it through. You finished CPMAP. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
And when did you actually graduate? I forget when you actually completed
Yeah, January of 24. So
last year.
a
Okay.
year ago, yeah.
Yeah. So and you've begun to build this new ministry. You just launched a new podcast.
Yeah.
Um, and you've got some collaborations in the works. I don't know if you're able or ready to talk about that yet, but yeah, just tell me
Yeah.
what the last year has been like.
Yeah, the last year has been it's been good. It's been challenging. Uh, it's been good to develop the product or the products, but different ways to walk with guys. I think it was like right after the graduation, it was like, what do I do now?
Mm.
And and I think I appreciate your continuing invitation for help throughout the whole of it. It's just like, what do I do now? And it's like you're like, I'm here to help. Like, let's talk. And I'm like, but what do I do now? And like never never really like taking the steps to reach out. But I think one of my favorite things has been just working on the capstone and taking that and continuing to flesh that out. So I've created a workshop on helping guys overcome porn addiction, um, and like just learning like how do I get this in front of other guys and um, there's been a few different avenues of that, like getting to some men's conferences, handing some priests some cards, but then like um, just connecting with other guys in the world of or the arena of like helping men pursue chastity and avoid or navigate lust. Um, and so that's been really good.
And you've been doing that individually with men through mentorship, right? So you've been able to really kind of put it into practice on a one-on-one basis. So the workshop is
Right.
sort of trying to get it out to a lot of people, but in the meantime, and since obviously since even in CPMAP, but you've been working with people individually.
Right. 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 Yeah.
What do you see as like, I don't know, what are some of the major movement pieces? Like what moves the needle for somebody who's struggling in that area to really feel and experience freedom?
Yeah. I like the more I work with guys who are struggling with it, like the more compassion like is like the first and biggest movement of it. Um like okay, you're struggling and like uh, it makes sense why you're struggling. Let's start there. Like given your history, given your interpersonal like relationships with like where you grew up, like let's really just make sense of why you're struggling. We weren't made to like know how to navigate having a mobile porn theater in our pockets, right? Like
Right.
that, and that's the reality for everyone. Um, and so like starting there has been like the biggest, like it gives guys that room to breathe, and then I always like try to soften it a little bit too. It's like compassion doesn't mean we're giving permission. Like I think a lot of guys start to freak out and it's like, what do you mean compassion? Like this is a sin. This is a sin. It's like, well, yeah, it is, but like compassion doesn't mean we're giving you permission. We're just making sense of like what's going on. Like,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like almost too hard to believe that there's a reason to understand why we're doing the wrong thing.
yeah,
It's almost like we part of us doesn't want to believe that it's understandable.
yeah,
And then it's almost like too dangerous to imagine that it's understandable. It's better if it stays in the safe little category of just you're bad.
right,
But
right,
then you can't work with that. If you're bad, then why would you try to be good?
yeah, and just kind of stuck in that place of like,
Yeah, and you
yeah,
can maybe white knuckle it or you can force something. You can try to like, muscle your way through it, but then
yeah.
you're going to come back around to feeling bad.
Right. And I think that's what I hear with guys who come in, like who like I've been sober for, a year, 2 years, but like it came back. And it's just like, yeah, it's that white knuckling. It's like you are actually getting to the deeper underlying like wound that you're trying to cope with. And
Right.
I think that's that's where I always like start to like gently navigate towards is like, okay, let's like make sense of why this is happening, and then like start to like build awareness into like, okay, what is it that you're trying to cope with? And I think honestly, like the mindfulness program at Catholic Psych, like the retreat that you put together, like that is probably like a great beginning place for anything, right? But like overcoming porn addiction in general, like it's like awareness is such an important part of that. Like it's
Yeah.
just so easy to switch to the coping mechanism without even like aware of what you're coping from.
Mm.
Um, so those are kind of the places that I've learned to go. It's still like a work in progress, and like walking with guys, and like and every guy's like different. Like um there's not like ever like the same case. Like everyone's got a different story when it
Yeah,
comes to it.
different patterns, different story, different context, different
Yeah.
relationships. Yeah, it's interesting. I think yeah, I've seen so much of like, marital distress becomes a big part of it. It either contributes to or is affected by it. And then,
Yeah.
family distress, job distress, and then you dig past all that surface level stuff, you get down into family of origin and, all those kinds of validation issues. And so there's going to be different contexts for every person, but, there are also some of the more predictable patterns and the more sort of common denominators that do connect the dots between all people.
Yeah.
So when you learn to see it as we do in CPMAP, you start to put all these pieces together and you realize like, yeah, you can help somebody work through with like a kind of coaching of better behavior, but you also have the tools to really go deep
Hmm.
and really untangle the knots of identity and trauma and all these other psychological issues. So, the coaching on the surface can be helpful, but we need to sort of have this sort of connective fibers in between all of those surface level things that we really do bring it deep. So it's been awesome watching you doing that and helping so many men struggling in that area, and also what you're building and what you're growing. This is really still you're still kind of in a building year
Oh yeah.
and a building phase, but it's gonna be awesome to have you back on like a year from now and see, what this progress looks like.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is, to be able to provide continued support. I mean, what you're doing is remarkable and it's hard. And what I've found is it's really difficult to be, kind of like when you got back from net. It's like the desolation of of being removed from community that was so helpful. Like when I left grad school, I kind of felt like that.
Yeah.
And professionally, and luckily, I got married at the end of grad school, so I had support, and I had my wife, and she's become an awesome partner and support in my professional business too. But leaving the hospital that I worked in, leaving grad school, the community that was there and postdoc, and then it's like I'm on my own, and it's really hard to do this on your own.
Yeah.
So I don't want people to go through that. Like if you can have a support group, a community of colleagues pushing you, holding you accountable, picking you up when things are not going well or giving you ideas when you've kind of hit a wall, why wouldn't we do that for each other?
Yeah.
So you're doing an amazing job. I really am grateful for the specific ministry to men that you're providing, and I think that you're a tremendous asset to the church and to the world. So we're going to be putting obviously all your links, your contact info, your new podcast. So talk about your podcast for a minute because you're just launching that now.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for your affirmation. I appreciate that. And um yeah, the podcast is a new endeavor of like just really wanting to show what brotherhood looks like. I feel like it's something that isn't readily apparent out there. Or like not readily apparent, but like it's missing. Like I don't think
So what's it
people
called?
the Hey Brother podcast. A
Okay, and
podcast
where is it?
it's on YouTube, and then like other major platforms, Spotify, Apple, but YouTube's kind of the place I've been funneling people to.
Yeah, so talk about the format. What's your layout for it?
Yeah, so we interview guys, and hear their stories. Typically, start with just like, okay, what makes you you, and then what's your experience with brotherhood like, and then what's a way you want to grow. Like, I think the more we can demonstrate vulnerability as men, like the more men see that and find it attractive and like are willing to be vulnerable or open to conversion, open to change themselves. And then the next episode after those interviews, I sit down with my actual brother, Mitch, and we talk about it. We talk about it, but like we make one comment about the interview, and then like last night we sat down when we were recording and we started talking about cocktails, or
Nice.
board games, and it's like it's honestly just us recording a conversation at that point, with a loose
Yeah.
agenda. So yeah.
No, it's awesome. I mean, in some ways, any listener right now, it's a little bit more of a just to get really meta for a minute. It's what we call parallel process is what we're doing right now, right?
Yeah.
And it's this is such a huge thing. If we circle back to the beginning of this conversation, even just like listening to Jason Everett give you direction, give you a model, an example. Men don't have examples of vulnerability.
Yeah.
It's very lacking. And I think, and then we get examples of like the opposite, which is this harsh, red pill, like all this like Andrew Tate stuff. And, it's like, where's the softness, the gentleness? It doesn't mean weakness.
Hmm.
So like, what do you get? How do you get an example of gentleness that's actually like Jason Everett is a monster.
Yeah.
Like, if you think about Jordan Peterson talking about, like, you have to be a monster. But what does that mean? It means you have the strength and power in you to do real violence, but you harness it, you control it, you use it for good, and
Yeah.
that's what converts the world. I mean, for Jason Everett to speak out in the ways that he does and to confront the issues that he does, I mean, he is no shrinking violet.
Mhm. Yeah.
But like he harnesses he's like one of the most gentle people. He's so compassionate. He's so understanding. I've seen him talk about, high school girls like just crying tears of being felt, heard, and seen after talks of his and like things like that.
Yeah.
It's like how do we make sense of that? How is that a quote unquote monster? Well, what does that mean? I mean, he does have that incredible strength. You have that incredible strength. We can show people what it's like where maybe men don't get a lot of that in the culture. And it's
Hmm.
like, actually, it's very manly to talk about feelings,
Yeah.
to talk about pain, wounds, vulnerability. And then it's like, yeah, and this is what we're doing about it. Like, we're going to fix the problems. We're going to grow. We're going to build. It's like, you don't just go to the gym and only lift the weights where it looks like it's easy for you. You go to the gym and you lift the super heavy weights that you're struggling under, that you're grunting, it's like we can show weakness in that sense, but like let's apply that to the holistic picture of the person, including our emotional lives and our interpersonal lives, our spiritual lives. It's like, yeah, it's okay to feel lonely, dark, desolate. It's okay to not feel connected to God. Like, keep going,
Yeah.
keep pushing.
Yeah.
And that's like lifting heavy weight.
Mm.
It
Yeah.
doesn't look pretty,
It's a
but
great analogy, because it's like I feel like as a guy, when we want it to be vulnerable or share emotions, it's like looking over at the bench press and seeing like three plates on each side, and it's just like, what do you mean? Like I can't do that. Like it's like,
yeah.
okay, let's start with 5 pounds. Like
Yeah.
we'll get there. Like because yeah, guys are so terrified of like and I mean, it all comes back to the family origin wounds and stuff like that, but it's like terrifying to
Right.
actually share yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Nick, I'm so blessed to have you here. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you're doing, and really, please, anybody listening, if you are of the masculine sort of human, really look deep into what Nick is doing here. Check out his YouTube. If you're of the female persuasion, maybe share this with some of the men in your life. Until next time, we're praying for you, and God bless you. Thanks for listening to the Being Human podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode and want to help us spread the word and hear more, please head over to iTunes, leave us a review, and subscribe, as it really helps us to get our content out to more people. Be sure to listen next time as I take you deeper into what it means to be human. If you want more free content and information about what we do at the Catholic Psych Institute, head on over to CatholicPsych.com. God bless you.